Hello and welcome to the Shiny Bees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. I'm your host Jo Milmine and this is episode 119, Yarn Shops of Shanghai.
I feel a need to laugh again with you, if that's alright.
Hello and welcome into another episode of the podcast. How are you? I hope you are well since last time I spoke to you when we were discussing all things British wool, sourcing and labelling with Joy Macmillan of the Knitting Goddess. And if you haven't heard that, I recommend you skip back to episode 118 as soon as you finish with this one and give it a listen, because it was a really good conversation around the ethics of your choices as a business owner and as a crafter, and how to go about finding out that information that helps you figure out whether the yarn that you're buying is from where they say it's from and whether it's something that you want to be buying yourself. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a recent visit this weekend just gone, actually, of mine to Shanghai, where I visited 2 yarn shops, and I wanted to tell you all about it because the last episode I did that had a little bit of a glimpse behind the red curtain, if you will, of China went down really well, and I had a lot of messages from you asking questions and asking for more content like that and more of the travel stories in particular. So I didn't want to give you too much in the whole way of personal calamities, because that's what it is with us, and a bit more but in terms of the yarn in particular and that sort of aspect of living in China, albeit briefly on this occasion over summer. And it's always really interesting when you go somewhere new. A lot of you might do this as well, and I certainly do it. I go and look on Ravelry. I find out where all the yarn shops are, where all the knit nights are. Anything that's going down on the yarn side, I go and try and find it out whenever I travel anywhere abroad, because it's always nice to have that kind of souvenir yarn and to see how yarn shops are different and try somewhere new and make some new yarny friends. And that's what I've done this time. So I knew from Ravelry, from the Chinese or Knitters in China group, that there were a lot of knitters in Shanghai. There were a lot of yarn shops and a lot of options. So I was very much looking forward to getting down there, having a look around and seeing how the scene is in Shanghai, because it is quite Western and quite different to a lot of the rest of China because of its position, and the fact that it's a port and stuff is makes it different. So that was really interesting, and I'll share some of that with you in the main kind of chat part of the episode. But before that, we're going to do a little bit of news. First up, many of you send me messages asking about the theme music to the podcast. It is a song called I Need a Drink, and it's by Adam and the Walter Boys. I got this music when it was still on Musical.ly, which doesn't exist anymore, and downloaded it there as PodSafe music. And I've been in touch with Adam of Adam and the Walter Boys, who's absolutely lovely, and he said that I could continue using this song for as long as I like, with their blessing basically, and any other songs in their back catalogue. But I often get asked by listeners where they can get it, because it's quite catchy and you might want to listen to all the rest of the song. And if you do, 79 pence of your hard-earned money on iTunes will get you a copy of this single. There's also a couple of albums on there. Some of the other songs are quite funky as well and quite fun, so you might want to get the album. But if you do, it's Adam and the Walter Boys and it's I Need a Drink. It's available on iTunes. I'll put a link in the show notes, and if you want to go and get yourself a copy of that, then by all means do, especially those of you that have emailed me many times asking where they can find it. Because they're absolutely lovely and they're very kindly let me carry on using the music, even though it's available for purchase. They're letting me carry on using it, and I really appreciate that. And I know a lot of you do too. So that's where you can find it if you are looking for it. The other thing I have for you is a little bit more news on my new project. It's almost ready for testing, and my VIP list from the people who signed up from the last time I mentioned it on the podcast have all been told a little bit more information about it. It's still under wraps at the moment, but I can tell you a little bit more now in advance of it becoming available for more wide testing once I know everything works and everything goes the way it's supposed to go. I've had this project in mind for about the last 4 years, and when I wanted to first build it in 2014, it was quite hard to do. It's quite expensive. It's a lot of custom coding, a lot of custom building of the website to get the functionality that I wanted. Now, things have moved on a lot since 2014 in technology, as you all know, and now that kind of capability is available much more widely. And I've come back to this idea because the problem has never really gone away, even though we have other ways to research yarnies and find yarn. It's never for me, this problem's never really gone away. And my problem is I'll go and find some beautiful yarn, and it'll be a single skein of something, and it'll be a particular blend, and it'll be hand dyed, so of course it's a one-off. And I'll want to pair it up with something else. I'll want another colour to go with it, and I want it to be the same base, and maybe the dyer that dyed it originally, maybe it's an ook, one of a kind, maybe it's not part of a kind of colour collection, because a lot of dyers don't do kind of colour collections that all go together. Whatever the reason, it can be really hard to find that kind of matching skein to go with it to make these bigger projects. I mean, heaven forbid you want to find enough for a fade. I mean, a lot of people find that difficult. If you want to be getting 4, 5, 6 skeins together, or whatever it is you want to do. And the reason for that is there is no central place to go searching for it. Yes, you can go look on Ravelry, but it's only going to tell you yarns in people's stashes or tell you what bases people carry. But because the hand-dyed is a one-off product, you've no guarantee that that's going to be in stock when you go looking for it. And you've no idea what a dyer might have at any particular time unless you go from website to website or Etsy shop to Etsy shop to try and find it. Also on Etsy, I find that when you type in hand-dyed yarn, you get delivered anything but, and you get a load of spurious results that are not relevant to you. It feels like a waste of time. You can't find what you want, and it feels really frustrating. And that's all time wasted. I mean, everyone loves yarn shopping, but that's all time wasted that you could be spent knitting and enjoying that project instead of actually ending up buying a load of other random yarn that you never knew you wanted and you just kind of came across, and now the problem's just expanded. It's kind of like gremlins getting wet after midnight and then eating an all-you-can-eat buffet. You just end up with more gremlins and nothing to pair them up with, basically, because that problem hasn't been solved until now. And that is my mission, is to make it much easier for people to find the yarns that they want without having to spend hours online, without getting frustrated, and to bring dyers who you've maybe never heard of before onto one platform where you can come and search them all in one go with really nice search algorithms that let you get only the kind of yarns and colours of yarns that you want shown in your search results, so you don't have to waste time, unless you want to, of course, but you don't have to waste time looking in shop after shop and website after website. You can have all of this delivered to you in one handy place. That's my vision for this project, and that's what I'm building now, and it's almost ready. So I have my initial testers. They're ready to go with testing the website. And if you want to be one of the first people to get access to the website once it becomes available to the mainstream, then you need to hop onto the waitlist, which is shinybees.com/VIP, VIP baby. And you can get on that list there to be notified when it is available for wider use. So I'm very, very excited about that. I'm trying to stay calm because I just want to squeal all of the time about it. But you'll see a lot more stuff coming from me once we get closer to that wider kind of public launch. You'll definitely see a lot more from me, and I will reveal the name and all of the ideas and vision I have behind it for you then. Sorry, there is a small child screaming, and there's nothing I can do about it. Outside, the Chinese children are very, very noisy and high-pitched, I'm afraid. You get used to it once you've been here for a while. So without further ado then, I think we should go on to the yarn shops of Shanghai. So this weekend I went off to Shanghai on a little tourist visit and took the train down to the coast to Shanghai. And the first thing of note that you need to know about the trains in China is they are incredibly efficient. They run on time, they do not run early, they do not run late. I've been on a lot of trains whilst I've been here and last year and the other times I've visited, and I've only ever been on one late train, and every train that day was late because there was a problem with the line. Not leaves, not signals, not like the UK where every train is late. This was really a one-off in terms of they run their trains like as a dream. It is amazing. They come on time, they leave on time. And in fact, if the train arrives into the station, heaven forbid, early, they don't open the doors. They open the doors when they say they're going to open the doors. And they close the doors when they say they're going to close the doors. And that is that. And I love that. I love a bit of efficiency. And these trains are all high-speed trains, and they go at 308 kilometres an hour. They can go up to 330 kilometres an hour now. They've lifted the speed limit above 300. And all of the trains have 16 carriages on them, and all of them have allocated seating, and it is just amazing. Like, there's loads of space. You can recline your seat. Business class has these special live flat beds in it. It is proper, nice train experience. They are very controlled in the way that they handle their passengers because there are so many people here. So the train stations, which are an homage to Soviet architecture, they're all quite brutalist. They're all very striking buildings. There's a lot of concrete involved outside, and they run them like clockwork. So they have one large main hall where most people are kept whilst they're waiting for their trains. And then when it comes to getting on your train time, there is a window of opportunity whereby you can get onto the platform to get to your train. You don't wait on platforms like you do in the UK. You wait in the main hall, the main departure hall, which is generally surrounded by a mezzanine level of various fast food outlets. Should you want to go buy some and take it on the train, which most people do. Most people do. And the weird thing is the fast food places, whether or not you're getting on a train, insist on putting your drink in a little carrier bag, like a little drink-sized carrier bag that they seal up, as if the carton that it's in isn't waterproof. I don't understand that, but it's a thing. And everyone goes and takes their kind of Kentucky Fried Chicken on the train or whatever it is they're taking on the train. Now, they have special barriers that are from the departure hall that go down to the platform. You can only go onto the platform that your train is coming to, and you can only go onto that at a certain amount of time before the train arrives, and it's all very strictly controlled. When you get on the platform, you go directly to the number of your carriage, which is all pre-allocated seating. Everyone has a seat, so you go to the number and you stand in a line in a nice orderly queue and wait for the train to arrive at the appropriate end of the carriage. They are always numbered the same way round, not like Virgin, where sometimes K's at the front, sometimes K's at the back. It's always the same. The numbers are always in the same place. The trains always stop to the exact amount of platform they have to stop at so that the queue lines up perfectly with the doors. And it's just an absolute dream. I really enjoy the trains here because I just feel like that is, if you're going to run a railway, like that is how you run a railway. That's how the Fat Controller does it, / the Top of Hat, depending on how politically correct you're going to be. And that is how you run a railway. So I felt like I had to share that with you because I do enjoy the railway here. And I feel like a lot of you are probably commuting, you might be on a train right now. Maybe a Southern Rail one that's, late, or maybe a Northern Rail one that's just not pitched up at all. And even if it did, it'd be like it came straight from the 80s. And I just feel like, I'm with you. I feel your pain, and I direct you to what you could have as a commuting option in China instead. Now, I went to 2 different yarn shops when I went to Shanghai, both of which are on the Bund side of the river, which is where all of the old Art Deco type buildings are. And we stayed on the other side, which is in the financial district, and that's where all the big skyscrapers and the Oriental Pearl Tower are, which is this amazing kind of pink, futuristic TV tower that gets lit up in all these different fairy lights at night. I mean, Shanghai is full of lights at night. China is full of lights at night anyway. But the lights are particularly spectacular on the buildings. And I absolutely love fairy lights, so it's totally up my street, including some very tasteful Incredibly tasteful. Tourist barges and tourist boats on the river, one of which was like a galleon that was covered from top to bottom in fairy lights. Amazing. So I went to two different ones. They're both on the Bund side of the river. They're only about 10 minutes, 15 minutes max away from the Bund. And that's a big area for tourists to stay in, and quite one of the quite popular areas, and one of the big tourist attractions to go walk along that river and take a look at all the lights. The first one, and I apologise for butchering Mandarin now, because my pronunciation, I'm working very hard. I'm working very hard at my Mandarin, but the way that you say it and the intonation is super important. So it can be the same word, and whether you go up or down at the end of a sentence means a completely different thing. And obviously, if you are speaking English, if you go up at the end of a sentence, it's generally a question. So it can be hard sometimes when you're asking a question to not go up at the end, because then it means a different word. And I'm not doing that great. I can order 3 beers, say hello, say you're welcome, and ask for some ice and a glass and some water and a straw. So all the major things I can do that are very important, obviously. So the first yarn shop I went to is the Hengquan Shang Yarn Shop, which is at 358 Jingling East Road in Huanju in Shanghai, which I say is just west of the Bund, so sort of southwest. Now, this is what I consider to be a traditional Chinese yarn shop, in that it is on a random kind of residential come shop road, because every road is residential and shops together. There's shops everywhere here because there are so many people. And there were some ladies' apparel type shops, and quite often the yarn will be in a shop that has the ladies' apparel out the front of it. So it's not always immediately obvious that what you're going to is indeed a yarn shop, and you quite often have to peer through the door to see if you can spot the yarn. But the yarn is always displayed in boxes. Sometimes they mix the colours, but it's always in a box, always with a plastic cover on the box. So it's not readily squishable. It isn't sitting there on the shelves. I assume because of dust and things like that, because these do open out onto the road. And because it kind of looks quite nice, I guess. But that's how it's sold. So they will sometimes mix the colours of a base in that so you can see the colours, but generally all of it comes in a box. None of it is out to squish. The lady will let you squish it. If you ask, she'll let you have a look at it and get it out, but it isn't readily available. Now, Hengyuan Xing is a brand that apparently formed in 1927 in Shanghai itself, and it isn't limited just to knitting wool. It is a massive brand. They do knitting wool, which started in 1991 when they opened that brand, but they also do apparel, they do sweaters, home textiles, and they are the #1 seller annually of wool sweaters in China. They've got more than 100 factories. They cover more than 90% of the municipal market in China, and it became a state-owned enterprise in 1956, so not a small concern by any stretch. 1997 was when they went into the sweaters and the other knitted apparel from the wool brand. So other things have been going before that. It was like a silky yarn brand before that. So man-made fibres, they went into the wool in 1991. And they've got 5,800 sales outlets and 375 million products on franchise. So this is a yarn shop, but it isn't part of a massive kind of conglomerate. It's a franchise of that. So that uses the brand name and it stocks their wool, but it is a franchise owned by a person. And what a lovely person she was, the lady who worked there. It was very small, on the scale of Ginger Twist Studio in Edinburgh, smaller than my bedroom at home, and I don't live in a mansion, like I live in a 4-bed detached. It's a new build, so it can't be that big, right? I would say probably maybe 4 by 4 meters max, and it was packed from floor to ceiling with yarn. And then in the middle of the floor, it was like a U-shaped walking area, was also piled up with yarn. And the lady had 2 different heights of chair, which she used to access the higher levels. Depending on which one you wanted, she would use a different chair. Lady after my own heart. I mean, most people would use a step ladder, but there wasn't really space to put one. And then people can't sit on a step ladder, whereas at least you can have 2 guests who come and sit in the yarn shop on these different sized chairs to come knit with her, right? They had some nice samples up as well, hanging in different colours so you could see some ideas of what you could knit. And they did have a really wide range of different fibres available, some of which I'm happy to knit with, merino, Australian merino, and some of which I'm going to pass on, raccoon fur. So they also carry mohair, they do cashmere, they do yak, they do blends thereof, silk, they also have cotton, and then they have some man-made fibre blends as well. Now the Beast elected to pick a nice spearmint green, and she always goes for the slightly shiny mercerized cotton based type yarns, which are bloody hard work to knit with and hurt your hands. And she's not been knitting that long, but she plays on, even though they're splitty as and they're really hard work and they slide off the needles. She still wants them because they're a bit shiny and they're cheaper than silk, so I kind of roll with it. This particular yarn, she got 6 balls of it, and it came to the princely sum of 48 yuan, which I always call it Juan. It's Yuan. It's a really strange pronunciation. 48 RMB, called RMB as well, which is about £5.49 for 300 grams of this cotton and wool blend. It was definitely 30% wool. I'm not sure what the other 70% was, but like I say, it looked like some kind of viscose, sea silky, rayon type, cotton type fibre. I think it was viscose, but I'm not again. The Google Translate can only go so far, and the lady was lovely, but her English was even less than my Mandarin, so it was one of those where we'll buy it and we'll try it. But for £5.49, that's pretty cheap for a happy child. 300 grams of the stuff, and it looks about a DK weight, I would say. I haven't checked the wraps per inch or anything yet, so I couldn't say for sure, but it looks DK-ish. And it's a nice colour, really nice colour. I went for some Australian merino. I spotted some light grey that looked like it was about a DK weight, and when I looked on the back through my Google Translate, it said B grade, and it's definitely not an extra fine merino. It is definitely a little bit rough on the merino front. Having said that, it's definitely less woolly, in inverted commas, than a lot of the breed yarns that I've had, and certainly less woolly than West Yorkshire Spinners Airedale, for instance, as a yarn goes. And I mean, I love that yarn, it's indestructible, but I thought I would try this, and I got 500 grams of the stuff, and that came in at 102 RMB, which is £11.67 for 500 grams. So potentially I'm getting a Lush cardigan here for £11.67, because that's what I'm going to knit with it and try it, because I'm currently knitting my fourth Lush in not yet West Yorkshire Spinners at all. It's in Countessa Blaise, Grande Merino, and that's lovely. But that is probably 10 times the amount I spent on that than I spent on this, and it is it might be 10 times as nice. It's a beautiful colour, but would I import Chinese yarn into the UK and knit with it there, even at that price? No, I wouldn't, because there's plenty of beautiful stuff right on my doorstep that I can use, and I want to use. But, when in China, I think it's rude not to try their yarns and see what the local people knit with and what they use and how it performs. I think it's quite interesting, and it's local, or it's spun locally, certainly. So I wanted to try that, and I thought, I'll give it a crack at that price. If even it becomes kind of carpet yarn, it doesn't matter. I'll try it anyway and see what happens. And obviously, these are franchised stores, and I want to support the local store owners, because you never know when you're going to need some raccoon fur yarn, right? Never. The box has a little, it's a blue box, and it had a little raccoon face on it, and it was dead cute. I'm just like, no, I can't have your raccoon fur. I know you'll have ripped it out from, the bloody roots. I'm not having any of that. But I'll put a picture in the show notes of the little surprised raccoon face. I just couldn't do it. Even though it was a cartoon raccoon, I couldn't do it. I'm not that curious. So we went there as well. As a point of note, if you are going to go and visit this place, we went there in a Didi, which is Chinese Uber, basically. Didi actually bought Uber out. They had a big kind of war, and then Uber sold out in China to Didi, which is a domestic version of Uber. It's really good. It's super cheap to use, way cheaper than actual Uber in the UK. Obviously, it's more than the metro, but it's still, even a 45-minute, ride from one side of the city to the other is still going to cost you like less than 20 quid. So cheap in terms of what we expect to pay in the UK for taxis. And because it was raining, and because this particular shop had been mentioned in the groups that it moved a few times, I didn't really want to be traipsing around from the metro stop trying to find this place, because I knew it wouldn't be an obvious find. And I wasn't 100% keen on splashing through the rain with the beast in tow. I'd have probably walked if it was me by myself, and if the weather was fine, then I would have. But DD is awesome. You can link it up to your card. It all gets paid automatically. It's super easy, and the only thing you need to be aware of is that they will try and ring you and speak to you in Mandarin. So I always you can send them a little text message as soon as they agree to pick you up, and I always say, sorry, I don't speak Chinese, and my location is accurate, my GPS location is accurate. And they're really good. They come straight away, they're dead friendly, dead nice, and it's super easy. The cars are clean, and that's the way we kind of get around if we need to go anywhere, rather than take the death trap mopeds. Although I'm considering a Union Jack one, we don't tend to take the mopeds, and obviously we wouldn't have had a moped there in Shanghai. So it was super, super interesting to go there. Very little shop, very small, but definitely what I would call a local's approach to buying yarn. Kind of local prices. It's affordable for people who actually live, the general population who actually live there. And I will let you know how the knitting experience goes with the grey merino, but I will put a picture in the show notes so you can take a look at it. The other yarn shop that I went to was at the opposite end of the scale, and it was the Lotus Yarns flagship store, which is called Yarn Avenue, and it is in a large mall called Joy City Mall, which is again in the kind of the Bund, sort of west of the Bund area in Shanghai. Now, Joy City Mall is a Western mall, which means it's full of Western brands, basically. All of the high-end sort of designer brands that you get from France, even stuff like Clark's, that's pimped up to be Clark's England, and all the shoes are 4 times the price, through to Kiehl's, all sorts of brands like that, like the high-end brands that you expect to get, and some high-end Chinese brands. You get Apple Store, all that kind of good stuff, Bose, all of the trainer shops, all the shoe shops, and everything else. It's on level 6, which is the creator level. Each level of the shopping malls tend to have a theme, so they'll have all of the shoe shops on one level together, all of the ladies' fashion on one level together. That's how they organise their malls, and generally the supermarket will be on the basement level of the mall, along with a lot of the cheaper street foodie, fast foodie, Chinese type food outlets, which is really cool when you walk around down there and have a look at what people are cooking and making. It's quite exciting. I quite enjoy it. So this is a new shop. It's only been open since January 2018, and Lotus is an export brand, basically. Lotus Cashmere Company was founded in 2007 in Shanghai in Hebei province, and they set up Lotus Yarns in 2009. They are a distributor in Asia and China for Noro, Louisa Harding, Opal, Cowgirl Blues, Knit Pro, Addy, Brittany, all those kinds of brands that you see everywhere. They are the distributor in China for them. And they do have a big range of their own yarns, which I've seen once before at Be Inspired Fibres in Edinburgh, which is run by May. And she does have a lot of Asian and kind of Oriental, Japanese, Chinese yarns. And I've seen them there before, a selection of Lotus yarns there before. The yarn shop itself looks super Western, as every shop does in that mall. You could be anywhere. If everyone wasn't Chinese, you could literally be in any country. And there were a lot of really nice looking samples available, and all of the yarns were in skeins and displayed openly, very much in the way that you would get in any Western yarn shop, where they're out on display and you can pick them up and touch them. I assume this, again, because it's in an air-conditioned, climate-controlled mall, there aren't the same concerns with dust and potential kind of damage from any kind of atmospheric stuff. So They had a really big notion section with loads of needles and crochet hooks and shawl pins, all the kind of good stuff that you get from all of those brands in any yarn shop. They had a large selection of lotus yarns, which had everything from cotton cashmere through to Tibetan yak and silk blends, full cashmere, all different weights as well. And then they had a selection of the foreign yarns in a separate area, and they had Norro and Louisa Harding, some Debbie Bliss, a lot of Scandinavian yarn, and some Cowgirl Blues, which is a South African yarn brand. In contrast, again, looking at the price points as you would expect in a Western mall, the Lotus yarn started at about 40, I think it was 35 RMB for a ball of cotton cashmere, for 50 grams of cotton cashmere. So very much a higher price point, going through to the higher end brands, because they even distribute Brooklyn tweed and things like that. But the Cowgirl Blues that I picked up, because it's South African brand and I know the brand, I've never used the yarn, but I know the brand. I went to that to pick it up to get a comparable, and that was 299 RMB, which is about £35. So a big difference in terms of what you pay for 100 grams of 100% South African high twist merino, hand dyed, and what you would expect to pay for that sort of product in the UK and in South Africa. Because don't forget, I've bought that very yarn base in South Africa, so I'm like Africa prices, which obviously when you're buying locally are much less, especially with the exchange rate against the rand. So loads and loads of choice. I didn't get much chance to look at the actual Lotus yarns from the inside and touch them, because in that area where they were, there was a large table and there appeared to be some sort of knitting lesson / workshop going on. There were some children knitting, which is awesome. Very excited to see that. And it wasn't immediately obvious, or indeed obvious at all, who were the staff who worked there, because no one appeared to have any badges. There was no uniforms, and they do love a good uniform in China. There was none of that, so it wasn't really obvious. And because of the placement of the table, I wasn't actually able to go and get hold of any of the Lotus, the nicer end of the Lotus stuff, and have a squish at it and a feel at it and see what I thought, because I couldn't get past all the people. And I didn't want to be pushing past them. It's okay if you're in China, like personal space doesn't really exist. So it's probably never come to mind for them. But I'm British and like I have my bubble and I don't want anyone in it. And I don't like it. So I'm too polite to push past. I did go and take a look around the outside though, because it had glass windows where all that you could see the yarn around the outside. It's kind of like a circular shop. And they had a good selection, but what I did find also with the Lotus yarns colours, which again I found with blacker yarns to a greater extent, is a lot of the colours are quite muddy. They look a bit like plasticine that's been mushed together to me. Not very clear colours, quite a bit of grey in there, quite a bit of brown in there, which probably is a design function. Maybe those colours suit Asian complexions better. They look terrible on me. And I'm not saying that Lotus should change all of the colours just because of me, but obviously I'm only going to knit with the colours that look good on me. And I've had my colours done, like I know what looks good, and there was nothing in the palette whatsoever that would have worked for me. That being said, I know a lot of people like the neutrals, they like their olive greens, they like the browns, they like what I call rodent grey, which is a grey with a lot of kind of brown undertones in it. People do like to use those and knit with them a lot, so I can see why they have them. It didn't appeal to me. So I didn't actually buy anything in that shop, mostly because I couldn't find someone who worked there to actually buy something from them. And although it was lovely, it definitely didn't have the same kind of friendly atmosphere as the little Chinese shop did. So, two ends of a scale, but that can be the case in any high-end yarn store. And I did have, Padawan with me. But there were children knitting in there, so I can't even really give them that excuse. I just felt like normally the service is really attentive and they come rushing over to try and help you. And there wasn't any of that. So that was a bit disappointing for me. But like I said, great selection and good to see that they're obviously targeting a international high-end And the aspirational kind of Chinese consumers who like those kind of brands and have the money to spend on them, that they're actually producing something at that end of the market as well. It's really interesting. Obviously, a good opportunity for overseas brands maybe to get involved with some of that. So they were the two yarn shops I went to, and if you're in Shanghai, I'd recommend you check them both out. The mall, Joy City Mall, has on the top floor on level 9, they have a Ferris wheel that you can get a good view of Shanghai from as well. So you're probably going to be in the region of that Lotus yarn shop anyway. And the other yarn shop was only 10 minutes by DD away from that. It wasn't far at all. And definitely worth a look if you want that more authentic Chinese experience of basically putting prices on calculators and using Google Translate to figure out exactly what's in the yarns. So that's all we've got time for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I hope you've enjoyed sharing a little bit of Chinese knitting shop culture with me today. Next week, I'm going to be talking to the awesome, the amazing, the lovely, the vivacious, I love the woman to death, Leona Jane Kelly of Fluff/Rusty Ferret Yarns. I did the interview last year, and a lot of you requested that she come back onto the show for a second time, and as she'd started hand dyeing her own yarns under the name Rusty Ferret, I thought it would be an amazing opportunity just to tap her again and find out how all that came about and hear a bit more about it. And she is amazing fun. So you're going to enjoy that episode, and I can't wait to bring that one to you next week. So all that remains for me to say is happy crafting. Hope you have a great week, and I'll speak to you all again soon. Cheers! You've been listening to the Shiny Bees podcast. Show notes for this episode can be found on the website at shinybees.com/119. Don't forget, if you'd like to be one of the first to hear about my new project going live, you can join the waiting list at shinybees.com/VIP.
To laugh again with you, if that's alright.